Okay, hello everyone. My name is, hello? Sorry, if I say hello, you're going to respond. My name is Eric Garcia. I'm the coach over at a club called Veritas. It's in Orange, California. If you don't know where Orange is, just think of Disneyland. And that's about right. Now, raise your hand if you still need a handout. Okay, where's Mr. Bechtel? Are there any handouts available?
Yeah, there's a few left on the table.
Oh, great. Nice. Okay, so keep your hands up, and if we could have it just sort of meander around. I want to just jump right into lecture right now, but if I could just kind of pass out the stack and have it kind of wind its way over, that'll be pretty good. We made like 60 or 70, so there should be enough. I don't know. Well, let's get down into it. And there should be someone around you with a handout, at the very least, so until you get one, you can sort of copy off them. But we do need to get started. Okay. My beginnings in debate was actually in high school Lincoln Douglas. I did Lincoln Douglas debate for about 3.5 years in the NFL National Forensics League for public schools. But I still got an education, so whatever. But in any case, I was horrible when I started out. I won like maybe one debate out of 6 or 8 or whatever it was. I was so nervous my very first debate. My hands were perspiring so much I couldn't uncap my pens. I was like, oh, I'm so nervous. My opponent, I was like, here, opponent, could you uncap it for me? He's like, here you go, kid. I'm like, I should lose just out of principle for this. It wouldn't debate if you uncapped my pen for me. By the time I was done, though, I finished 13th in the state of California. Not that year. It took me till my senior year to do that. So if you're new to Lincoln Douglas debate, keep punching, keep slugging at it. The rewards are really good. You make a lot of pretty good friends as two people literally punch the person next to them. That's classic. It's very good. I would have done the same thing. Anyway, so after that, I had a lot of policy experience. I coached Parley in college for more years than I care to recount. And as of now, I'm the head team policy coach over at Veritas. But I still maintain a very close ties to my LD roots because I do love them so. And no matter how much I make fun of the LDers on my team, you should know that I respect them. In any case, let's get down to the topic. Resolve, the United States has a moral obligation to mitigate international conflicts. So I took some liberty here and just wanted to look at a couple of different definitions of mitigation and try to introduce you to a few terms that I think will rear their heads as the season progresses. A couple of terms you're going to hear are hard power and soft power. You can see on the handout, this is developed by Joseph Nye from Harvard. And so hard power versus soft power, I think either one, if you're crafty in how you write your cases, could be different versions of mitigate. So mitigate could be hard power military intervention. That's how hard power is defined. You send in bombers, you send in troops, special forces, things that explode. They're very good. It's like flexing your military power, right? If you did TP last year, team policy last year with military presence, you may have a lot of examples from which to draw upon, and all of a sudden, all those examples, historical and current, become a lot more relevant in LD. So those of you that did TP last year and made the jump once you saw, holy cow, marine resources, I'm out of here. Congratulations. Congratulations. There's like 3 people. Yes, that's you? Yeah, that's your loss. No, it's fine. I'm teasing. I'm mostly teasing. So, but at the end of the day, keep those examples in your head. Don't take your TP files and just throw them out. You want to keep them because it could be relevant if you're discussing hard power. If you want to interpret the resolution, let's say you're affirmative and you don't want to go, the whole 9 yards and say, oh great, now we're just going to invade and just go into a Rwanda-like event and just send in special forces. No, we want to do something soft powery. Mitigate if you find the right definition, and there are some contextual definitions you could look for. The right definition could be things like soft power threats. And what that means, it sounds kind of odd, but what Joseph Nye means is that you just threaten to use military force without actually pulling the trigger on it, so to speak. So it's that sort of military presence, that sort of intimidation. Does that sort of make sense? Okay. Here it says payments. I was so tempted to put bribes, but I thought I'd just use the exact words of Professor Nye. So soft power could be things like, okay, hey, listen, how about we increase your development assistance aid if you comply with what the United States government would like you to do in this certain problem. It's a bribe, but it's impolite to call it. It's so gauche to call it a bribe, in that regard. And diplomacy, it's hey bro, let's hug it out, sort of thing, right? So let's just talk about the problem. That requires some sort of intervention, whatever the international conflict might be. We good so far? Okay, great. So that's kind of where I'm looking at in terms of intervention. Now. Oh, I kind of skipped over that. Yeah, let's go right to mitigate soft power. Three different forms sort of came to my mind when we're talking about mitigation as soft power. The first is mitigate with negotiations, what I just sort of talked about. Mitigate with development assistance. I already made fun of that too. And number three, mitigate certainly with arms sales, since we're not just straight up giving them cash payments like to U.S. aid development assistance, but we have influence and sway over other governments by the types of weapons we're willing to sell to them. Does that sort of make sense, right? Think way back to the one good Iron Man film. 3. I'm just kidding. Everyone knows that's a lie. The first one. I'm so sorry, sir. I crushed your dreams. I talk about rising expectations. But when at first when they say we know that whoever possesses Stark weaponry controls the battlefield, sort of thing, right? So think of the United States as Stark weapons, and all the other nations want access to our cool gadgets and military systems, and we can sort of pull some levers of power, soft power, and get them to comply if we're willing to increase the amount we're willing to sell to them, or open new weapon systems available to them, spare parts, whatever. Use your imagination. You'll find out once you do the research. Yeah? Okay. So anyway, that's soft power. I was mostly going to talk about, and I am still going to mostly talk about hard power, because that's what most folks did. That's what I thought about when I first heard the topic. Plus, that's the topic was assigned to me. But first of all, just really quick, why intervene? So maybe some justifications in your cases. Forgive me if it sounds a little team policy-ish, but you have access to so many values. That's not a problem. You get different lectures on that. But try to, match up to one of these things. Regime change. Regime change. You have a particularly bloody tyrant, a particularly bad dictator, and you need to just change the regime. Maybe they're causing human rights violations, something of that order. Yeah, we'll just save that for later. Also, just the very basic saving lives, right? People are getting slaughtered in a distant land. We think it's bad that innocent people are getting slaughtered. And by the way, that's the word you should use to get emotional impact in your debates. Don't say killed. Say slaughtered. It's a lot more emotionally impactful in your rounds. 3 of you are grinning like, yeah, I'm going to say. Well, you should do it because it brings forward the pathos a lot more vividly. Those sorts of vivid, powerful words. Killed, slaughtered, it's a difference. Huh?
Thesaurus. Those are very handy.
Oh, a thesaurus?
Yes. I use that.
Oh, yeah, thesaurus.com. Thesaurus.com for the win, yeah. Open sea access. I just put that in. If there's I was thinking of the South China Sea, sort of international conflicts, because the resolution doesn't have to be humanitarian in nature. It's just an international conflict. So maybe if you can use some sort of hard power to maybe muscle through a territorial dispute between, say, like the Philippines and Taiwan and China, send an aircraft carrier group to mellow people out. That sort of soft power influence. So you can get really squirrely and really creative with this resolution. That's kind of my thing. I like that. So open sea access. I was thinking, why not? Just brainstorming. Anyway, let's talk about military intervention just straight up. There are a few criticisms of taking the United States military and just dropping troops and equipment and using just firepower and intimidation to solve problems. So there's a list of criticisms that you're going to want to keep in mind, even if you don't run this as your affirmative, or even if you're not planning on running this as part of your case strategy. You should still be aware of it, because I bet you're going to encounter it, right? Because people you're going to get somebody that's like, oh, I love action films, so I'm just going to use the military. Or you're going to get a team policy, someone that did team policy last year, and they're going to try to find some way to work in their affirmative case into LD land. Yeah, I love it. You're such a good crowd, because 3 of you are like, yeah, me too, I'm going to do that too. So there you go. Just watch out, just steal Martin Winchell's case. Is we should put drones here to mitigate this conflict. Let's just shoot down stuff. What's that? Yeah, exactly. You have to have a hole that you thought you could escape, but you won't. Anyway, number one is inconsistent application. Inconsistent application means, why are we solving the problem in country X, but we can't solve the problem in country Y? The United States is not the global cop. This is sort of the rhetoric you'll hear. And by the way, that rhetoric is very appealing to I would imagine, some part of your judge pool. Global cop. Ugh, that sounds exhausting. That sounds impossible. Why should we be the global cop? If we do anything, we should just intervene fairly. Why are we intervening between Israel and the Palestinian Authority when we can't intervene between Tibet and China? That's inconsistent of us. It's an inconsistent application. Does that make sense the way it is? Right. So that's one criticism you'll get. Oh, and by the way, I have answers to it. So I guess I had, much like Gollum in The Two Towers, I debated myself when I was writing this lecture. I'm like, Gollum Smeagol, to be technically precise. Put my nerd cred out there. Number two, innocent people die in warfare. There's no getting around. That's pretty much a slam dunk. I can see a very clever Lincoln Douglas debater that wants to take a full-blown deontological position. If it's wrong to kill, if it's always wrong to kill, so why are we killing innocent civilians to save them? Why are you reducing the human factor, human lives? Oh, okay, we may have killed 2,000, but we saved 70,000. So those 2,000 people we killed with our weapons, it's cool. Like, why are you reducing human life to that? LD, make a sort of LD value-ish argument, because that's the sport you've chosen, to sort of make that argument really stick. And the likelihood is guaranteed, by the way, to bring in more TP language. The likelihood of innocent people dying in warfare, now, the magnitude, the number of people dying that's a little more up for debate. But in almost every military confrontation, the bigger it is, the more, it's almost inevitable, really. So I think you win a really high risk of innocent people dying if your opponent pulls the trigger on hard power, particularly, the harder power, the more it links. Number three, loss of American soft power. Essentially, people don't like us anymore. So you remember when Obama began his first term, and he was talking about how, what a good crowd. I just saw that, the three people doing the same reaction I can't do. When he started his first term, he was talking about the problem with negotiating with Iran. Right? And a lot of the pundits on the political left wing said, the reason Iran doesn't like us is because people hate George W. Bush. But now with Obama, he's very popular, he's very charming. We can hit the diplomatic reset button, which is another joke with Russia thing. We can hit the diplomatic reset button and they'll like us better. So we'll get more done because we'll just be likable, right? This will also be called things like world opinion. You ever heard that phrase before? It's world opinion. We have to shore up the world opinion. It's kind of like almost schoolyard, where you have, you want to be popular, right? You want to be popular. So at the end of the day, okay, most of you passed that little nerd test. That's good. So it's bad when we invade, because when we invade and start killing innocent civilians, or slaughtering them, depending on which side of the topic you are, killing innocent civilians to restore order, that reduces our popularity because it makes us reviled, usually by the people we're dropping the bombs on. Usually the people committing the human rights violations really don't like us, so big surprise there. But they may argue some sort of splash effect, people are just freaked out that the United States is using military power because they really can't stop us, and what if, oh my goodness, what if my dictatorial regime is next? So I will now express my voice in the United Nations because, I don't know, it makes me feel better. Anyway, I'm just leaking sarcasm left and right. I just realized how sarcastic this whole lecture didn't sound like that in my head. That's horrible. All right. Number 4. Oh yeah, so I guess the terminal impact to that would be that it hurts diplomacy down the road. We need soft power to engage in other diplomatic efforts down the road. So if you squander our soft power reservoir here, we can't use it in other areas, right? So it's almost like a zero-sum game in this argument. I'm not saying that's true, but that's how the argument will be delivered. I think I've been going kind of fast, so are there any questions before I go to number 4? No? You've just been flowing furiously, right? Okay, great. Number 4, war is only for national security. Number 5, lack of legality. All right. You're like, no. That's right. Number 4, war is only for national security. Whenever we exercise our military strength, it should only be for national security. So think Ron Paul. Essentially. Whoa. Wow, that was a reaction. I wasn't even trying to be sarcastic. But here's the deal. Knowing what you know about your judge pool, this could be a persuasive argument, just like automatically. So the question is not, do you like the argument? The question is, will it get traction with the judge? Because you think you're debating your opponent. You're not really completely debating your opponent. You're talking to the judge. The opponent is just kind of getting in the way of clear communication. He's just kind of, messing up your message. So you want to keep the judge paramount in your mind at all times. That's why you shouldn't get too emotionally bent out of shape when your opponent acts kind of jerky. Because I'm like, don't vote for the jerky guy. Vote for me. I'm a nice guy. I'm talking to you. So he or she treats you jerky. Whatever. You're not going to vote for me anyway. This sucker in the back of the room is going to vote for me. So there's that. Anyway, so war is only for national security. Even if you hate this argument, you might be able to get some traction with your more libertarian judges in the pool. I mean, that's just a fact. So yeah, I'm personally, I'm not sure if I think personally it doesn't matter what I think about the argument, but you're aware of it. Number 5, lack of illegality. I felt a tangent coming on. Let's move on. It's a new thing I'm trying. Number 5, lack of legality. Lack of legality. Does the president even have authority to project power overseas in the manner that whatever the examples are being brought up by the affirmative? At the end of the day, you want to look into things what are called the War Powers Resolution, the WPR, or the War Powers Act, the WPA. There it is. War Powers Act, War Powers Resolution. That came up once in a while last year in TP. But basically it says the president has authority to send a military presence overseas, but he has to obtain the consent of Congress within 90 days. Right? If you want to see where that gets really messed up, look at Libya. Libya is a great example of where the War Powers Act really just kind of falls on its face a little bit. Yeah, I think we can go on from there. Number 6, the ends don't justify the means. The ends don't justify the means. In other words, we're scared of Machiavelli. The ends don't justify the means. Judge, and I guess this is a little bit like number 2, innocent people die in warfare, but the ends don't justify the means could be talking about like any negative means, right? So, long story short, Judge, just because we have good intentions or just because our goals are good doesn't justify immoral ways of obtaining those goals, right? That's when you're going to get in your full-blown deontological versus consequentialist sort of LD debates, and that's why you're doing the activity. So that's where it's going to be entertained. Number 7, America overreach. America overreach. You could also call it overstretch too, but overreach. That's one way to put it. We just simply don't have the resources. Again, global cop rears its head. I don't say ugly or pretty. It's up to you. It rears its head, and that's part of the debate as well. Some sort of form of American overreach. So if you want to get a little ticky-tack in LD, if you debate LD the way my coach wanted me to do LD and make it a little more practical, then you say, Judge, they have this great value, but they could never actually practically reach it because we just don't have enough troops to be the global cop. Right? So you can kind of win value land by showing they may have a great value and great intention, but we will never, ever reach that. So my opponent is essentially endorsing utopia. I would love to live in utopia, but we live in the real world, therefore my value wins or my case wins, my side of the case wins. So there's that. And lastly, inconsistent results. Inconsistent results basically means we're bad at it. We're bad at nation building. We're bad at restoring order. Sometimes we're good at it if we devote decades to it and amazing sums of money, like with the Marshall Plan. Sometimes we're really good at settling countries down, like rebuilding countries. Sometimes we're awful at it, right? Sometimes we intervene and it's still big of a mess. Libya is a good example of that. I almost wanted to say Egypt, but we didn't intervene. So there's that. Okay, before I answer all these criticisms and go from Gollum to Smeagol, are there any questions thus far? Yes.
What does deontological mean?
Okay, that's a really good question. I don't know. No, deontological. Ask an LDer. No. Deontological means that what makes something right or wrong is the action you're taking. So morality is obtained by the action you do. Let me contrast it by consequentialism. Morality is determined by the consequences of your actions, right? So I'll give you a brief example of this. This is a good tangent. This is something new I'm trying as well. You live in Poland, and it is 1942, 43. Let's make it 43. And you are not Jewish, but you're just residing, you're minding your own business. You're not a Nazi, you're not in the army, you're just living in Poland, and it's really a bad time, but whatever. And so you hear a knock at the door, knock, 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 and holy cow, it's the SS. And they look at you and they say, hello, nice Polish citizen, we're looking for Jews. Do you know if there are any Jews around in the neighborhood? So you know that your neighbor down the street has a couple of families in the attic. But you know it's really bad to lie. Right? Deontology, like a straight, very strict deontological perspective would say, lying is always wrong. So I determine the morality of my action by what I actually do. So since lying is wrong, why yes, Nazi officers, there's 2 families just down the road. But I'm moral because I did not lie. Right? Consequentialism would say, are you nuts? What you just did just essentially signed the death warrant of a couple of Jewish families down the road, not to mention the family of whomever's hiding them. Right? So we look at the results of our actions to determine morality. And so that's the sort of tension of forces you have here. Now that's kind of an extreme hypothetical case. Look up the trolley problem. How do you spell trolley? Trolley? Like the San Francisco treat, ding ding, rice-a-roni, those commercials with the trolley. Yeah, look up the trolley problem. The trolley problem is one of those classic thought experiments, and there are some really cool YouTube videos on that, and that'll illustrate the difference between like a sort of deontological decision versus a consequentialist decision. And I'll tell you what, I'll go through the rest of my sheet, and if I have time left over, I'll just take you through the trolley problem. It's really fun. I do it with, I have kind of a twisted sense of humor, so sometimes I go through it with elementary school students if they think, I'm like, yeah, would you pull the lever to save, it's really fun. So then, yeah, the elementary school kids are like traumatized for life, years of counseling, but they're okay. But they're all consequentialists at the end of the day. I'm kidding. Or am I? Maybe I'm not kidding. Did that come close to answering your question? Okay, good. All right, let's, or any other questions? No? This is going to be awkward silence? Okay. I thought about just standing there and finishing the whole bottle of water. But I thought that would be unprofessional. It's something new I'm trying. Let's go to the answers to the criticisms. It's probably funnier in your head anyway. All right, let's answer all these objections to the best of our ability. Some of these answers will be good. Some of them you'll just have to tweak and make good. But it's a starting point. Number 1, the answer to the inconsistent, that's what AT stands for, by the way, if you hadn't figured that out. Some people put A, number 2. But that's way too abstract for me, so I just put capital A, capital T. Inconsistent application. Let's take the sentence, you can't stop all human rights violations in the world, so why are you trying to stop this one? Let's take that sentence and apply it to other things. If you can't stop all murder everywhere, so why are you justified trying to stop it in this city? Right? You can't stop all cheating in schools, so why are you cracking down on it over here? Right? It's kind of a strange statement once you replace it with other things. The fact that I can't stop it everywhere and create a utopia does not mean I should stop trying in this instance. So I think that's a pretty, you can even have a couple of examples there, and I think that's maybe a clever way out of it. Be all right. Number 2, innocent people die in warfare. Yeah. The subpoint A for that, this one's kind of full-on consequentialist, kind of cold-blooded here. You just say, yes, 2,000 people may die, but we have just saved 100,000. So I bet you these 98,000 people are happy you're not in charge, sort of thing, right? And if you can just defend a sort of utilitarian or consequentialist framework to your case, then go for it. Like if that's a debate you're willing to have, then go for it, right? I think at some level, you may be able to argue that there's virtue to saving as much innocent life as possible. Now, you may have some blood on your hands. That's what the other side will argue, and you just have that debate out. Yeah?
Could you say that their inaction to do anything about the scenario would result in them having blood on their hands and more people?
You could make the argument. I think the counter-argument, I'm just debating for practice, so I would never challenge someone with that fine hat, sir. I'm being serious. I'm jealous of people that pull off hats. In any case, yeah, I think the argument goes that if you make no decision at all, your hands are morally clean. It's not your problem. You're not involved, right? You're not doing anything. It's just not your thing. But once you insert yourself into the situation, you then have some sort of moral responsibility for what's going on, right? And you could either be persuaded by that or not, but there you go. Aren't you writing that down? That's a good argument. I'm so sorry. I'm just kind of a bully. Subpoint B. I need intervention. Okay, simmer down. Subpoint B. Many government policies cause innocent people to die. This is an interesting. Dennis Prager sometimes uses this argument in the death penalty debate. Particularly the argument that, well, he makes a couple of arguments just to put this in context. The death penalty is legitimate because, number one, it's justice. Two, it may have a deterrent effect. And so people always argue, yeah, but Dennis, what if one innocent person dies? Like, that's the argument. Even if one innocent person dies from the death penalty, then that invalidates the death penalty. He has a lot of different arguments. The one I put here is relevant to the death penalty and to this one. Well, there are a lot of government policies that cause innocent people to die, but we don't automatically invalidate those. For example, whenever you raise the speed limit from 55 to 65, or 55 to 75, more innocent people will die in car accidents, right? And that's pretty obvious. But at the end of the day, the fact that more innocent people die does not invalidate the policy. Well, why not? You're responsible for the speed limit change, aren't you? Does that sort of make sense? Now you could argue, well, it's the driver that's responsible, or the guy that has a DUI that's responsible. You can debate that out. So there's that. That one's a little trickier because that's not as much of a known argument. I think it could be persuasive for Dennis Prager fans, but so it just depends on how you package that one. The net benefits calculus argument is easier for you to get away with it because it's more intuitive. The speed limit thing, people are like, whoa, I've never heard that before. So you may get like the sort of factor involved with the argument. The judge hears the argument and they go, huh? And then they don't vote on it because like, whoa, I don't know. Emotionally, I have a problem voting for that argument because I got to think about this sort of thing. Anyway, number 3, answer to loss of American soft power. The answer to that, a couple of answers to that. Subpoint A, soft power is useless. Obama's popularity has not translated into a solution with Iran. So all the notion about, no, the world will just love him, and then we will have foreign policy victories. That hasn't really manifested. Kim Jong-un isn't really giving us some oh, it's Obama? Oh, okay, let's disarm, right? Iran isn't like, I hated George W., but Obama, I have his poster on my wall. Oh, yeah, sure, him and whatever. Yeah, so... I love that. Let's disarm. I'll give up my nuclear program because it's the Obama. So that hasn't really worked out. Subpoint B, soft power pursuit is harmful. If we focus on, and this will have a lot of impact for your potential judge pool, I think. If we focus on just always apologizing, every time we go visit a country, we're sorry for something, or we're kowtowing. You can even say every time we bow to a foreign leader without actually mentioning names. Like that's really persuasive. We did that one time when we endorsed selling F-16s to Taiwan as one of our affirmative cases, and we actually came out and said, Judge, why are we bowing to China? We never actually named names of Obawa. Oh wow. What would you say about that? About Obama, that was pretty. I wish I'd thought of that intentionally. If we'd had Obama, we actually never mentioned Obama by name, but we said bowing. Why are we bowing to this country? Some of your judge pool that has some of your judges may have reactions to that, and they're like, yeah, I like that guy. And so then you kind of win their heart, so to speak. So apologizing, kowtowing, bowing, that sort of thing. I didn't know how to spell kowtow until I had to write this lecture, so that was kind of educational. It wasn't how I thought. I thought it was like, moo. Let's try something new. Subpoint C. Oh, I want to go on a tangent so bad right now. Subpoint C. World opinion feels good, but it doesn't do much. Like emotionally, it's comforting. It's like chocolate. Right? It's comforting and it may make you feel better, but essentially at the end of the day, you're just eating instead of dealing with your problems. That's kind of like soft power. It's like, I don't want to deal with the weapons program, so I'll just try to be popular. You make the problem worse. So now, in addition to to whatever problem you had, now you have type 2 diabetes or whatever. So that's probably a more candid view of soft power on my part than you wanted. Number 4, candid, not candy. Yes, sir. You get 10 points to Gryffindor for you. That's right, sir. Hi, Well, I'm hitting all the nerd bases today. Let's move on. You'll take all this out in editing, right? I mean to break the fourth wall, but... Hit rewind. Okay. Where am I at? Number 4? Oh, gosh. Number 4 is war is only for national security. We talked about people dying. It was so fun. War is only for national security. A few answers to this. Prager also makes the argument that the Korean War in 1950 to 1953 was not for resources because, it was only, no, we'll keep that in my head. You could argue that it was a national security war because we wanted to stop the domino effect of communism taking over different nations. But at the end of the day, you can't really say we fought the Korean War for oil or something, or we fought it for gold or something, because there's not a lot of natural resources there that we really wanted. Subpoint B, Rwanda. I know we didn't intervene in Rwanda, but you could sort of make the argument that... that Rwanda was almost like a turn, I suppose, that if country X falls apart, then we have a national security situation we have to deal with it. So let's prevent this country from falling into shambles, because we're going to either have to go in when it's a big problem or when it's a little problem. So let's go in now when it's a little problem and sort of try to bolster the country or the economy or what have you. And, yeah. Yeah, is there something on the page?
I just want to say, we sort of had this, when Nick Harrington did a speech on analogies, we brought up this argument, and a really good analogy is if there's a fire in your neighbor's house or in a bush, you need to put it out before it comes over to your house. So may not directly affect you if it's in your neighbor's house, it would get bigger.
Nice, that's perfect. Did everyone hear that analogy? Probably when Harrington said it, right? Could you say it a lot louder and use your debate voice?
Okay, so the analogy used for this argument is that if there's a fire in your neighbor's house or in some bush near your house, then while it may not directly affect you yet, if you allowed the fire to grow, then it would affect you and burn down your house. So you need to put out the fire before it would harm you.
What's your name? Lexi. I don't want to debate you, Lexi. All right, let's go to number 5, answer to legality. And thank you, by the way. It's my way of saying thank you as I kind of poke fun at you. Number 5, legality. So I think your answer, if people bring up some sort of legality, just know the War Powers Resolution, the War Powers Act. Try to know it backwards to front. Really get a good feel for what you're able to do versus what you're not able to do. I know you're not engaging fiat power on the LD side, but you're engaging hypothetical examples at some level. So make sure your hypotheticals fall within the boundaries of the law, and you'll be all right. Before we go to number 6, any questions thus far? Oh, yes, sir.
These would be used in your rebuttals for the most part, right? Because you can't really put these in if you're on the affirmative side, for instance. You can't really use it in the beginning, so in your first speech, wouldn't you have to wait till the rebuttals to really bring these out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, unless you want to try to spike out answers, but I'm not a fan.
My opponent might say this, so if
Yeah, you probably have better things to do with your time instead of laying like 10 spikes in a row. It's like a spike strip. But yeah, so there's that. So I would probably say have these in reserve and call them up as necessary. Or worse, you may give your opponent an idea for an argument. Right? Here are 10 things my opponent can say. Meanwhile, your opponent's like, that's a good idea. Yeah, good idea. Number 6, answers to ends don't justify the means. Realize that saying the ends don't justify the means is such a broad statement, right? That is just such a blanket statement. It almost rises to the level of bumper sticker, right? You ever seen those bumper stickers that they throw out an argument, but they're so ambiguous, you don't really know what they mean? Like, war is not the answer. You seen that bumper sticker? War is not the answer. And I'm behind the guy. It's usually a hybrid. And I'm behind the guy. I'm behind the guy, and I'm thinking, well, that depends on the question. War is not the answer. Is it slavery? Is the question slavery? Is the question Nazism? Is the question fascism? Well, sometimes war is the answer. Depends on the question. But you have those sort of bumper stickers, and they're meant to like shut you up with their level of being profound and just well, I don't want to say war is the answer. How will people think of me? Sort of thing. Anyway, whatever. So it's sort of a bumper sticker argument, which I don't like, but I enjoy dismantling. So an example could be cutting another person's chest with a knife is wrong. I hope you agree with that statement. But if you're a surgeon, you're cutting for the very first time, then you have to engage the heart surgery, so you have to do that. Yeah, so I just touched on music a little bit. Another example is taking children away from their parents by force is wrong, right? And the parents are like, hey man, be careful. But Child Protective Services taking a child away from physically abusive parents, I think in some of those situations you would probably be on board with that idea. And the lying to Nazis, I already did that one, example. So there are exceptions in the real world. So what does that mean for debate? Well, pro-interventionists can try to mitigate the argument and have the judge try to take it back to consequentialism, right? Judge, what we're doing is straight up moral if the ends are good. Right? So it pulls you back into that framework of the debate. Which, I mean, if you're just really, really super good at consequentialism, then you have just like an instant out of everything. But you just better be really confident in defending your framework. Because, I mean, you have one argument you're going to live or die on, and that would be it. Number 7, inconsistent results, American overreach. I sort of lumped these two together. Oh, sorry, I have this, patach, solvency, TP word in here. Solvency is not necessarily related to justification. Yeah, we did well in Korea, did poorly elsewhere. So just because we did it bad in one instance doesn't mean it's always bad to do it. Does that sort of make sense? But the other side of that coin is just because we did it well here doesn't justify doing it. So let's just justify the intervention based off the examples I bring up on its own merits. So, yeah.
To bring this back to like regulating, cheating and trying to stop that. Well, just because we failed in stopping this school from cheating, doesn't mean you shouldn't just stop doing it. You should continue to do it.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Plus, your judges, I'm sure your judges being mostly parent community judges, who's going to be pro cheating, right? Is going to be like, I think my son should cheat all the time. I mean, come on. Alumni judges, well, they're still in school, so they're like, come on, man, there's only so much Monster I can drink, so can't study all the time. The National Institute for Homeschool Debate does not endorse the comments of Eric Garcia, nor do they endorse any philosophy of cheating or not cheating. This is brought to you by Major League Baseball. Yes. Side effects to my lectures may include rash and high-functioning Tourette's. All right, go ahead.
When you said that, is the Edmund Burke quote saying along the lines of saying that man's worst mistake is not doing anything because he can only do a little?
Oh, right. Evil occurs when good people do nothing, sort of thing. Are we thinking of the same person?
No, it's by Edmund Burke. Oh,
this is why I'm a TP coach, so yeah, you got me. It's a quotation by a smart person. I'm on board. All that to say, I agree with you. I can't say it straight up. Yeah, Okay, subpoint D. Another Pragerism that I just threw out there. I think Prager said he got it from somebody else, but he doesn't remember where he got it. So then I'm not, what do I know? Yeah, he is. So don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. Don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. That's basically to say, just because you can't reach utopia, just because you can't do something where nobody ever dies and no one on your side ever dies and you completely wipe out the bad guy, just because you can't do it perfectly doesn't mean you should never do something to improve a situation. Does that sort of make sense? And I'm sure you could make it simpler. I think this sentence makes it simpler. If we can't do it perfectly, ought not be done at all is kind of a strange thing to say. There you have it. And little c, I guess that's just a sort of straight up, do we want genocidal tyrants in charge of nations? Realize at the end of the day, this is sort of an uncomfortable truth, but sometimes there's a whole spectrum of evil in terms of how much human rights abuses go down, right? Like, I'm sure we can agree that Mubarak was, not a really great guy. Castro is probably not a really great guy at all, but someone like Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il, which wipe out millions of their people with starvation and just complete, prison camps and re-education camps, and people just disappear, and you just basically set yourself up as a god to be worshipped. Yeah, there may be a big difference from an American dictator from your average non-American dictator. And you just don't hear, oh my gosh, this guy's a tyrant. Let's put him in the tyrant box, right? Figure out the levels of human rights violations that go down. Right? I'm not saying you should endorse human rights violations, but we live in the real world where sometimes we put up with bad people, but they're not as bad as the people that would replace them. Does that sort of make sense? Yay, we got rid of Mubarak. Who's next? I'm sure it's a lovely person. But it turns out to be someone worse. Like when you get rid of the Shah in Iran. Pretty bad for human rights, pretty bad for political freedom. But then you have the Ayatollahs that come in and secret police like you wouldn't believe, right? So that's pretty, that's just the start. Don't get me started. I mean, you guys saw Argo. So there it is. Or not. It's rated R. Never watch it. It's rated R. But you should watch Star Wars. Like all the time. That won't rot your brain. It'll give you lots of great LD quotations. It's really great. Like, you must do what you feel is right, of course, sort of thing. All right. I'm sorry, I just replayed the movie in my head. I'm back now. Important examples that you want to get familiar with. Korean War, 1950. To 1953. That's definitely intervention, definitely hard power. That turned out okay at the point to where everyone living in South Korea doesn't have to live with just the literal, just awful, torturous existence that their brothers and sisters and cousins to the north have to. I mean, it's a draw since we drew at the parallel, but I think that's a win for the people of South Korea, the millions of people in South Korea that live in freedom and prosperity. Not to get me start humming the battle theme of the Republic, but that turned out all right. Bosnia, Kosovo. That intervention seemed to come out all right. We had to have a military presence there for a long time. An argument could be made that we stopped the slaughter and genocide of a large Muslim population. On the other hand, we had to be there a long time. Civilians do get killed. You need to be familiar with that. Both sides of the debate, because you never know when you have to endorse the example or not endorse the example. So there it is. Rwanda, 1984. If you want to see just a heartbreaking collapse of international responsibility, there's a scene in a Monty Python. Wow. There's a scene in a Monty Python film. There's a scene in a Monty Python film called, I forget what it's called. It's probably better that I don't know the name anyway. Sure, it's rated G. Monty Python film, and it comes out and it says, and they say there's these people, and one of their friends gets kidnapped, and they look at each other and say, right, this calls for immediate discussion instead of immediate action. So they get together in their room, they start talking for hours on end, and finally the kidnapped guy's girlfriend comes in and says, what are you doing? They've captured Brian. Right, okay, we're still talking through the plan, and they're still, I'm going to do something, and she walks out and does something, and they look around like, Right, now where were we? Let's keep talking. In some way, that kind of reminds me of what went down in Rwanda in 1994. There's a whole lot of discussion. There's like maybe some action by the Belgians, but eventually they sort of pull out, and any sort of real traction, any sort of agreement on the soft power world opinion again is way too late for hundreds of thousands of Rwandans. You ever seen the film? Here's a serious film for a change from me. You ever seen the film Hotel Rwanda? Yeah, get your parents' permission. It's pretty heartbreaking and some gruesome at times. But that could be a pretty powerful example when you open up discussion on the affirmative. So I think that's all I have. Unless you have some questions, we could talk about the trolley problem or... Oh, no, but I have a lecture at 3, so I got to get going. I get to talk about oil drilling now. Yeah, that's all right. But I can take a quick question before I bail. Yes? No, that'll keep you busy for a while. We're okay. All right, well, thanks for your attention and your time. I'll see you guys around.